Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them. They never rent quality flicks. They always pick the most intellectually devoid movie on the racks.
And now, on with the show.
Andy Sidaris, master of babes, brawn, and bullets, takes you on an adventure you won't forget. Return to Savage Beach.
This is a major bust for our lethal force agency.
$1 billion in gold and 1,000,000 ways to die.
Those agents will be in for a surprise once they find the island.
Which ending does the story have?
Spread out!
Can I believe what I see?
What happened to the gold?
Can I unmask you, unveil your secret, or will
There are hundreds of uncharted islands.
Good luck, ladies.
Which ending does the story have? When we return to Savage Beach, what
This is it.
the way things
It's time to kick ass and take names.
be?
Whoa! That really hurt.
They know that we're onto them.
The truth will lie just within our reach. The fear and the terror will disappear forever.
Let's do it.
We'll bring the Savage Beach gold back for free.
The hidden treasure is only one of the surprises in store for you when you return to Savage Beach. Peak of Boom.
Drink to that.
Return to Savage Beach, an Andy Sidaris film starring Playboy centerfolds Shay Marks, Kerry Westcott, and Penthouse Pets Julie K. Smith and Julie Strain as Willow Black, with WCW's wrestling sensation Marcus Buff Bagwell.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to This Week in Geek's Loose Cannon, and we are at the end of the summer of Sidaris. I am one of your hosts. Today I am Mike the Birdman, but I'm not alone as we traverse this cavalcade of crap. I'm sorry to say that. I've got opinions. I'm joined by my compatriot, my brother, my very own Molokai cargo pilot, Friendo, from the lovely land of Kitchener, Ontario, Canada.
Alex, the producer, and have I had an upgrade maybe in more than one front protuberance or two in this movie? Maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I've got some opinions as well. I mean, Sidaris will talk. And then, of course, It's not loose cannon without the guy who introduced us to this. And I don't know whether to love you, Aaron, or to hate you after what I've just seen from the lovely land of Lansing, Michigan.
I'm Aaron Pollyea, and yeah, I may have introduced you, and these might not be the best, but I'm sad that we're coming to an end with it.
It's interesting because, watching Sidaris' career when he started from the early 1970s till the last movie, I think the last one we're covering came out in, 1998?
Yeah.
So to give people the brief overview, so we've covered Andy Sidaris's more or less his entire Bullets, Bombs, and Babes filmography. We started off with Hard Ticket to Hawaii, I want to say, or Malibu Express.
Malibu Express is the first one.
Yeah, and we started this journey several years ago. We started before the pandemic with the first two.
Yeah, and then timing just worked out where we could record a bunch of these in a row, and we just finished with this one. What are the movies called? They're like
Return to Savage Beach, and then as sort of a little bonus, we decided to talk about Stacey, which was his first theatrical feature film that was retooled later on, and some of the plot was retooled into one of his later films, but it's very early. And in between all this, I think in 2019 2020, something like that. We covered his other movie from the 70s, and I'm drawing a blank on it. Was it
Seven?
Seven, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Which was, again, you could see sort of hybrids where he was making very different movies when it comes to tone in the 70s before he went to the 80s. And then if you wanted to look at the quality, I think on a bell curve for his films, his bell curve would start rather, if we don't count the 70s, it starts rather high. It goes up a little bit, and then there's a hard crash somewhere around 1993.
Yeah, like, it's wild. So to give you an idea for this, so I watched this with my next door neighbor and best friend, besides Alex, Liam, the other night. We watched Return to Savage Beach, and then we watched Stacey right afterwards, and it was like tonal whiplash.
Yeah,
in the regards, because I think Sidaris, I would actually go so far as to argue, in the 70s, I actually think he started off kind of strong, actually.
From the filmmaking perspective, I wouldn't say plot wise.
Yeah.
But like I would say I felt the same way that he made more competent movies earlier on.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know. I think I actually have a completely different opinion with you guys on this.
I'm saying from a technical perspective.
I'm saying even from a technical perspective, I think his earlier stuff was definitely a learning experience. Like his early stuff was competent, I have no doubt, but you can see that he has gotten better with how to utilize what resources he has as time goes on, how to shoot very specific types of things, how to do like swipe cuts, or even like all in camera, because it's not like he's doing a lot of this stuff even in the 1990s using any kind of digital editing tools. Everything's in camera. So him doing like swipes or things like that, he gets really technically better and better.
One thing that I did kind of notice, and Liam picked up on this too, Sidaris knows how to use vehicles really well. Like there's one scene in Stacey that I really want to bring up. It's the last chase scene. I looked at Liam, and we're watching this at like 2:00 in the morning, so cognition, whatever it is. We kind of looked at each other. It was like, do you get Terminator 2 vibes off this? And it's a scene where Stacey, the private detective, is being chased in a Formula One racing car by a helicopter, and it's flying remarkably low to the ground, like it's chasing her like the T-1000 when he chases John Connor and Sarah in the SWAT truck in the finale of that film. And even when you look at his other movies like Hard Ticket, Malibu, Savage Beats, etc., he uses vehicles really well. And even some of his fight scenes with like some of the gun stuff can be kind of competent at times. I think as his career went on, obviously, as you said, Aaron, it was a learning experience. I felt he became more comfortable and he started experimenting more with stuff, and you could see him having a lot more fun with stuff. My big problem is when we get to Return to Savage Beach, which was his final film in 1998, it felt like everything he'd learned just kind of went out the window. And I'll be frank with you guys, that was a miserable experience. And what I mean by that is it felt like there was about 45 minutes of actual plot, most of it exposition dialogue, and it was like just random sex scenes. And I know we're covering the bullet, bombs, and babes thing, but it felt so unnecessary and gratuitous that
like several movies to me pieced together.
Yeah, like it wasn't fun. It wasn't erotic, as Liam described it. It's like, this is the interpretive dance of what sex might look like, as you know, done by aliens.
Now, it's not as bad as a couple of the previous films where we were watching and we're like, was he just shooting a porno and then filmed regular movie parts around it? It wasn't quite to the level. I don't think it was Day of the Warrior. Was it the one before that? That was.
To me, I think this is actually probably the most skeevy looking one with nudity. Just because there's gratuitous nudity in like the ocean, but then like. I was talking like in our little chat that we have before we recorded. that I was specifically listening to the commentary on this because this is the last Sidaris film. I get sad that like this is the last one.
Yeah.
But like he's talking about shooting in 16 millimeter because the film looks much better when you're shooting underwater parts. Oh yeah, there is nudity here, sure, and we had to shoot doing this, and this. And he's talking about like the technical aspects of it, and then kind of like joking about the nudity, but the nudity is like incredibly gratuitous.
Yeah, and like
more
it really
so like
takes away from stuff.
It was almost like, and as much as you could say, well, is there a case for too much nudity? In some ways, yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
He did not have the balance that, like the earlier films, they had that 35 millimeter, drive-in movie look, especially the early to mid 80s movies.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, there's a certain look and feel to that, and they had sort of the right, if there's a quote right amount of nudity for it to make sense for a film.
It was charming nudity.
Yeah,
nudity.
And then sometime around like 91 or 91, we started seeing things where it almost looked like the scene was being shot before the movie to sell the movie to other markets.
I kind of feel once Julie Strand came into things.
Really strange.
I think that's when things started to take a pretty massive shift. And it's like, because we got some stuff with like Donna Spear and everything, but it was never to this extreme degree.
It's when he switched. It's when he switched from 35 millimeter to 16. And there was one movie that I think visually looked the best. I think it was Guns.
Guns was really good. Guns and Savage Beats I really enjoyed.
But the original Guns, that was the first movie that had that shift from that 80s look to a 90s look, but I think he was still shooting 35. And after that, everything started to look like a TV episode. And that's because most television and most TV movies at that time was 16 millimeter. And that can have a certain appeal to it, but it's weird that I almost feel like these movies, these last maybe 3 or 4, ever since his son started filming with him, they almost look like they were framed for full screen. Like they were clearly made with the VHS in mind, versus the previous ones were filmed so that they could be shot in widescreen, broadcast in widescreen in theaters, or put on VHS and look fine. There was less going on in the pictures, like visually. In these, and like everything was center mass. Everything felt like he would shoot like the sexy music video scenes, basically. Like they looked like something out of like a music video.
Yes.
Which those scenes always had, and even in this one, they seemed to have better lighting, better camera work, everything. And it felt like he was like, we got to shoot this action now to fill up the rest of this movie. And then he would shoot the rest of it. And I was like, well, this is shot better. This was, edited better, everything, all the sex stuff. And to me, that screamed, he would film a sex scene or two, go over to Europe where they're much more liberal, and go, look what we've got for this movie. Here's a 3-minute clip of the sex scene, and here's the movie title, here's the plot, who wants it? And then sell it for $500,000 to Israel, $500,000, bidder from Germany, and he would scrounge that money together, and that's how he made the movie.
One of the things that you might be surprised about is that at least the dance numbers, or like the scenes where there is nudity but there's a lot of movement. I'm not talking about like, they're laying down next to a fireplace and having sex.
I know what you mean, like the strip clubs and stuff.
Yes, that was all choreographed by Arlene, his wife.
Good for her.
I mean,
and they turned out to be some of the better shots, honestly.
And she talked in the commentary. She talks about how she wanted to like block this, or how they wanted to costume it. And she made a joke in this movie in the commentary where she says, "I always choose the clothes for these scenes with thinking about if they can be removed with your teeth." And Andy like comes back with the joke, well, now you have some background into our relationship, folks. Oh, and it's really funny, but it seems honest, like she was not joking. She was actually like trying to explain her thought process behind like how they're making this one scene. It's very strange. Just thought I'd like
notice. I guess. Yeah. Before we to talk about what the quote unquote plot of this movie is, one thing that I noticed, and it was very hard for me not to pay attention to, it seems like Return to Savage Beats, it wasn't edited as tight as some of the other movies were. Like it felt lazy as compared to some of the other ones. Like it didn't
felt like
feel as coherent.
Felt like some scenes he yelled cut, but then kept rolling, and there's like half a second or a second longer where it should have been trimmed.
Yeah, like it just, and the pacing was all over the place. I mean, one thing, again, to speak as a creative writer, a person who works in the creative industry, one thing I do like about Sidaris and these lethal ladies, sort of this lore he's built up around the world of Molokai cargo and whatnot. You have a lore, you have established bad guys and good guys, and sort of what this agency stands for. Honestly, it was interesting filmmaking. It was like a goofy teenage boy's dream of sexy James Bond, which on the surface, kind of cool. I'm not going to lie. Like there was one thing we watched. The girl only appeared in one, but I can't remember what her name was, but I really liked what she brought to it. She was a new character. She was having a relationship with the agent who was training her. But I liked the chemistry that was brought to the screen. I liked some of the story that was brought there. It's where they found the Civil War gold in the bush, if you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think I do.
Yeah, that one I really like because, like I said, I think Sidaris can be a fun storyteller. Now, you're not going to come here for Christopher Nolan. You're not coming here for Citizen Kane, but you're getting a goofy fun. This one, I felt there was a lot of potential, but I felt like all the sexy time overwhelmed it. And some of the cast in this was kind of fun. Like, as much as we make fun of Buff Bagwell as Warrior, he's kind of goofing. He's kind of a goofy charm in this. I kind of like him.
Backstory to this and the previous film was when Buff Bagwell was, I guess, off injured in quotes, but it was because he had a botched fake calf implants because he was like extremely, like he's one of those guys that, as far as wrestlers go, he worked on his body, but he was always had like body dysmorphia. So he was always trying to get like calf implants and a butt implant and all these things. And apparently they got infected and botched, so he couldn't wrestle. So he spent like a year and a half off of wrestling, just doing these movies. Yeah. So he got a little money this way so he could get like one of those SAG cards so he could get insurance. So it's like, to me, it's funny for the background story. And I'm like, Buff Bagwell's back, but he's Warrior. But now he's on their side. Why? Just because he spent a little time in jail, he's like, I'm a good guy now.
Yeah, that I thought was actually kind of funny. They're like, you were in there for 2 years. Like, yeah, but you guys got me out, so things are cool, right? Like, yeah.
I've been redeemed. I made mistakes. I'm a good guy now. Okay, here you're in our secret organization.
By the way, the girl that you were thinking of is Susie Simpson, who played Becky Midnight.
I
remember that. Yeah.
Really enjoyed her.
So not only is the Warrior now, a good guy, his arch nemesis is now his love interest.
Yeah, it was like, all right, sure. Another one that I really enjoyed for a casting, I think his name is Gerald Okumura. He plays Fu. He's like the other Asian henchman you need when you can't get a hold of Al Long. And man, let me tell you, if you want a wild trip down a guy's website, go visit this guy's website. I am seriously writing him after. Oh yeah. You can get a Lego minifigure. You can get signed nunchucks. No, seriously, he was a fantastically fun part in this movie. And I'm gonna have Aaron explain the plot in just a minute here. But one thing I found out about this is the engineer that's from K-Sexy, Harry the Cat. That's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle co-creator Kevin Eastman.
Yeah, who's married to Julie Strain.
And there's a set of ninjas who show up at one point in this movie. They're all wearing Ninja Turtles colored sashes, which I thought was kind of fun because I'm like, there is no way that's not a hidden Ninja Turtles Easter egg.
Also, remember, this is when he still had co-ownership. It's before Paramount and Nickelodeon bought it from him. So if they wanted to use Turtles, they could use Turtles if he let them, right?
Yeah.
So there was no issues. And also, I'm pretty darn sure that was their house that they were filming
that would not surprise me.
There's scenes in the background with like giant comic book pop art.
Yes.
And I'm like, which you would not see in the 90s in a Hollywood producer's home unless they were well, why would it be there? Because he made $1 bazillion on the Three Turtles movies and the cartoon.
The scene where there is the giant like chair in the yard.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that. That actually is their backyard. That's Eastman and Julie Strain's backyard.
Okay.
Because that specific chair is used in photo shoots that Julie did with other Penthouse pets.
Oh, okay.
Which is really weird to see that in a film like this.
Yeah, I remember chatting with Liam. They're like, what is the giant chair used for? And then you also notice just how small Gerald Okumura really is. He's a very small man, but evidently has an amazing body of stunt work. He's done Ninja Turtle stuff. He's done Power Ranger stuff. He was the Hard Master from G.I. Joe Retaliation, which kind of Rise of Cobra. Sorry, but yeah, I was like, wow, that's not exactly a small movie. So that's pretty cool that his career kind of went that way.
Before we do the plot rundown, I would say overall for this movie and for all of the series entirely, I stand by the fact that Rodrigo is probably the breakout star of the whole series that held it together, as usually playing an evil henchman.
Oh yeah. In the commentaries, Andy Sidaris constantly praises him. He absolutely loves working with him, and supposedly Rodrigo Oberon, he freaking loved working for Andy. I mean, from everything I've read with the actors and actresses that have been in multiples of these movies, they all loved working for Malibu Bay Productions and working for the Sidaris family because they always treated everyone with respect. They always paid everyone appropriately. Like they didn't underpay people,
and seems like a sense of family almost after you do a couple films together.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've talked about this on one of our podcasts, but with Donna Spear, she had a really bad time in her personal life when they were filming Hard Ticket to Hawaii, and she was not very professional on set. And they didn't know if they were going to have her back for the next movie. She didn't know if she was going to come back, but Andy talked to her and said, "Okay, look, I think you have a lot of potential." And she came back and apologized to every single person in the production for her behavior on Hard Ticket to Hawaii. Everyone accepted her, and then moved on like professionals.
Good.
And they were friends. Everybody was friends on that set, supposedly. So, the production company was fairly small. Andy Sidaris constantly says that, hey, look, our entire production team, the team that's out there filming is 12 people at most. And then we have a couple guys back doing editing. And that's it. That's the team.
Yeah, because you can tell it's a small, tight-knit team, and especially in the 90s stuff, there's a very similar look and feel to everything, so they probably use the same crew pretty much the whole way through.
Yes. I'm sorry if I got off topic there. But
that's on topic. This is sort of, it's this movie's roundup, but also as a whole, seeing what it was, and there were certain actors that I'm glad came back. I guess from plot-wise,
okay,
let's break it down very quickly. But the plot from my point of view is, hey, let's go back to one of our most popular films. I would say Hard Ticket to Hawaii is probably the most popular now because of internet infamy. But when this film was being made, I wouldn't be surprised if the original Savage Beach was probably his most successful on VHS because just the era that it came out and everything too. So it would make sense to use that as a point to go back to. You know, they were able to save maybe 10 to 20% of the runtime of the movie by just reusing shots from the original movie as flashbacks.
Sure.
But you know, the premise is pretty simple. It's somebody breaks in to their secure facility to steal the map on how to find the island, and they're going to go steal gold. That's pretty much the plot. How they get around to it is kind of funny and ridiculous. There's a single security guard. There's just the two secretaries. There's no security cameras at all.
Okay, I've got to mention this. So I'm watching this. I'm thinking, okay, you are secret person trying to break into a fairly secure and not exactly a secret organization.
Roller
You
skater
are wearing
pizza.
yeah, and hi, I remember the lady in red latex with the pizza. You are the most conspicuous person in the world walking into a government office.
But not in the, because you got to remember, in my head, this movie and this whole series takes place in the Last Action Hero world where everybody just looks like this.
Sure.
You know what? That's not an unreasonable response. We live in the multiverse now, so sure.
In my head, all of his movies are from that universe. Like,
okay,
we would like it's funny. Like, I was thinking to myself the whole time, I'm like, when are we going to see a Jack Slater poster in the background? Like, this could easily be in the Last Action Hero universe within the film.
Yeah,
Someone's
it could have been
writing that fan fiction right now.
There you go. Write it down.
That's Carrie Westcott, if I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, the person who's in the red latex, and that's actually a costume from Julie Strain.
Okay.
Why am I not surprised?
Well, I could say the movie opens with Julie Strain, which I laughed so hard at. She's coming out of the water, like, you know, and she has found a way to use the least amount of clothing possible to not get a ticket at a public beach.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was actually surprised at that bikini.
Like,
yeah,
what I was surprised that was with all the people around. Like, there wasn't just like one kid just staring the whole time.
Well, okay. Another side note: do you know that scene where the two girls are like naked underwater?
Yeah,
they are filming on a public beach in Hawaii, like 20 yards offshore from a resort hotel with people watching. And they just said, no, we just stayed underwater, took off our clothes, filmed in 16 millimeter, and then put them back on. No one knew. Like, wow.
Can't really do that now, but at the time, I was laughing because she gets out of the water and Julie's like completely soaked. The very next scene, she's still walking towards her car. Hair is completely dry.
Yep.
I was like, continuity.
Yeah, continuity error. That's okay. It's an Andy Sidaris film. It's okay.
That's fine. And I was like, oh, we're off to the races already when this is happening like that. And then when I saw, like you said, like the pizza delivery costume, and I'm thinking, what? There ain't no pizza delivery ladies like that here. At least not anymore.
That is not an Uber driver.
I doubt that scene is how it was originally written in the script. And the reason I say that, again, if you listen to the commentary is like incredibly enlightening. But like Carrie Westcott said, I have a special skill that I can rollerblade. And okay, well, let's do that. And then Julie Strain was on set and said, here, I think you'll look good in this. That's so, like Arlene Sidaris said, no, we didn't have that costume. Julie Strain just took it out of her wardrobe and gave it to her.
Why am I guessing that was in the back of her car?
And do you know one of the secretaries that she knocks out is Arlene Sidaris's mom?
I'm not surprised, actually.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised.
But I just love it. Super secret agency, not a single security camera.
Nope. And one security guy who is seduced by what looks like pretty shitty street pizza.
But well, you never know. I mean, if you're hungry, you're hungry. But at the same time, I'm thinking there's no security camera, not just for their office, for that whole building or anything. And there's no locks on the doors. You just walk in and you're like, doop, 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 click, 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 click. Commodore Amiga computer.
Pre-September 11th. Pre-September 11th. It's a different world. It's a different world.
Yeah, this is true. It's still at the same time, I'm thinking, it's like, I was like, oh, he could easily finish this as being like, that was all part of the plan. We set a trap. We purposely left it open, but they didn't do that. They got, yeah. Anyway. I hope the pizza was good, but it might have been. Who knows? But yeah. So as far as the rest of the plot goes, I have no idea anymore.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This movie was weirdly hard to follow at times because like you would get plot, sexy time, extended sexy time in a nightclub for some reason. And the plot that was most baffling to me were they Mission Impossible the ending.
wait, before that, this felt like they were planning initially to they were trying to get the teams from the movies that were in different cities to all converge for one big
Avengers type plot.
Yes. Sure. And it was cool because there were some people that returned or some people that were located in different cities that were from previous films. Too bad they couldn't get people back from the first 3 or 4 movies, but regardless, and at the same time, like it's all being tied together with they have a satellite that is launched that can zero in on bad guys anywhere in the world at any time, and they use was it K-Sexy, the radio, to relay coded messages as to what the bad guys are doing and where, and that's how they are communicating how they're going to take down these like crime rings, which sure.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll believe it. The satellite, the remote satellite uplink was a UHF antenna that I used to have at my grandparents' cottage.
Yeah. And that's a little satellite, the satellite dish that's appeared in like a dozen Andy Sidaris films.
Yeah. But like, I know exactly what it's an old RCA. It's got 2 little knobs on there, and it's got the only thing that they did was they tore off the ring loop and the bunny ears, but it has the directional part. But that was like a $20 antenna that we used to use at our cottage, which it looks good because it looks like a satellite, but it'll pick up a TV station. That's about it. But yeah, I that's the basic plot. Right, it's just they're returning to the beach to try to get the gold, and Rodrigo is returning as his character from, is it
Savage Beach?
Yeah, from Savage Beach, and he's got Phantom of the Opera face.
Yeah, I was like, what in the hell am I watching when I saw that?
And of course, with spoilers, people, when he peels it off, and wait, he looks normal, but wait, Mission Impossible, we're gonna tear away. But instead of just the scars being covered up, it's a completely different person who has a different sized head and is different height.
Yeah, it's really good spy stuff. Really good. I mean, hey, look, if Tom Cruise can do it in Mission Impossible, well, an Andy Sidaris film can.
And you got to remember that this was literally 2 years after that first Mission Impossible movie reignited that whole franchise. So it makes sense that he was going to ape on that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, and I'm kind of glad he kind of did. I mean, I'm not saying, Donna's going to fight Ethan Hunt, but I'm interested to see that movie.
It was the best part of the film in that it was the first time he introduced something new in years.
Mm-hmm.
You had all the little peppered in best parts from previous, like the remote controlled explosions, the explosive tip things, which was also funny that there was an explosive crossbow arrow bolt that didn't explode until they also fired a rocket.
Yeah. And did you know, I like how they never assumed that there would be like HD, so to speak, like prints of this. And you can tell that the explosive bolts just are like red electrical tape on the end of crossbow bolts.
Oh yeah.
It's just red electrical. I love that. I actually think that's charming.
Because their original thought, like by this point, like after like 91, 92, when they realized they weren't going to get limited theatrical runs anymore, probably even in Europe, when they went to 16 millimeter, that already in general adds a little more grain to it. And then they figured, okay, this is going to be either broadcast on like Cinemax or it's going to be put on VHS, which really would blur it up. So I'm watching that then on an interlaced TV, you wouldn't have been able to tell. But now when you're scanning a pristine 16 millimeter print and putting it on Blu-ray, it's quite obvious. And that's what I mentioned with like the framing too. In his last 5 or 6 pictures, there was no longer anything happening outside of the perfect center of the screen. Because
Alex, can I make like a correction really quick?
Yeah.
All of his films are 35 millimeter, including this one.
They are.
Yes, all of them are.
Because
look like it. Only the underwater stuff is 16 in this.
Really? Then he was using completely different cameras and film stock, circa like 91 onward.
Sure, that's possible, but seriously, everything's 35 millimeter.
Wow. Then all I got to say is he got real bad at shooting after like 1992.
I think it's the cameras.
Visibly worse.
I think it's the cameras and shooting on different locations in Louisiana, where there isn't as quality of light.
I was going to say, you're right. That is a big aspect too. You have a lot more golden hour shooting time when you're in Hawaii.
Yep. And that's where, if you actually watch all the stuff that's in Hawaii, even in this film, when you watch the stuff that is very obviously in Hawaii, it looks good. It's just as good as the old stuff. It's when you get to the interiors and the exteriors that are either filmed in Texas or Shreveport, Louisiana, and they're standing in for someplace else. Then it looks different. So don't think that, oh, look, here's tropical plants, they're in Hawaii. Usually it's Shreveport. Unless you see the wide open ocean or mountains in the background, they're in Shreveport or on the other side of the lake in Texas shooting. One of these days I'm going to stop in Shreveport and go to these filming locations for all these old, because I pass by it a lot going down to visit Darlene's family. So
just like make a scrapbook.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool, actually.
Because like I know we haven't really done like an itemized view of the plot here, because it's pretty much what it is. It's find gold. It's more simple than some of the previous ones. It's more simple yet somehow still nonsensical in many aspects, but at least there's no toxic snakes or something else. I was kind of hoping we'd have a cyborg. I was hoping that like when they ripped off his skin and it was going to be like that other actor, that they were going to do a Scooby-Doo and go, wait a minute, there's something more here, and then they were going to like rip off his face and there'd be like a robot face from Westworld underneath it, and they'd be like, oh my god, the cyborgs are invading, and then that would lead into some other movie.
See, I was kind of hoping, because at the time I was kind of hoping, like, are they going to do like a Mortal Kombat, give him like a Kano face or like a Terminator like thing? I'm like, that might be kind of neat.
Maybe had he made some more movies, I mean, that's it for the plot. It ends on the happy, everybody makes the fun little remark and they all smile. It's the same thing that's happened in several films. Great. I guess we may as well like very quickly move on into like, we've already talked about what we like about his movies and which ones we like the best. Generally the earlier ones, some of the middle era ones. This is still entertaining, but what I'm more interested in talking about for the next couple of minutes is, where do we think we would have liked him to go had he been able to make another film or two?
See, they do talk about the next film that they were planning on doing in the commentary for this, and it was called Battlezone Hawaii. And it was going to be a continuation of this story, of this like gold falling into the wrong hands and the rise of like this new criminal organization that would actually fight against the lethal ladies. And it would have been a return to Hawaii as the primary filming location. Beyond that, I don't know. Like,
I think robots would have been cool, or as the internet got bigger, having something more to do with cybercrime.
Yeah, that was kind of hinted at. Cybercrime was hinted at in this one a little bit, with Shay Mark's character being like the computer expert. With that being said, Andy Sidaris was not a fan of like CGI, and he wouldn't have wanted to do like complex computer graphics.
No, but he could have done something like had a screen replaced with like a visual overlay where they could have a little graphic here or there. I think what could have been cool is they'd be like, oh, it's we've stopped the gold theft ring and all this, and then instead of that, they could have done a film. Let's say they had done something in 2000 or 2001. You could have capitalized on the whole Y2K thing, and it's like this organization is planning to take down the banking system for Y2K.
Yeah. I think they probably, Andy Sidaris, knowing Andy Sidaris and him like actually liking topical stuff, he would have probably done something dealing with like terrorist organizations in the Middle East.
Yeah,
something like that.
Like, I think it would have been cool had like they tied something into like African blood diamonds, or maybe bring in like a pirate cartel from Mexico or something. There could have been really cool ideas for bad guys, and maybe he could have discovered more people like that Ricardo guy. Like, yeah, like I would. One thing, if he had the budget, I would have liked to have seen him do more stuff with vehicles, like specifically cars. Like, I'm not saying he has to pull like Fast and the Furious type stuff, but I seem to recall one of the early movies he did, there was a fair degree of car stuff in it, and I thought, I'm like, you know what, he kind of knows what he's doing. And then, like I said, when I was watching Stacey, you know what you're doing. I think you could have done a lot more stuff if you had the budget and the talented crew to work around it.
Stacey reminded me a lot of the movies of the early 70s, like Drive and stuff. It was at Parallel Lines. There's a bunch of those like highway chase movies that were really popular in the early 70s.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Obviously, most of those were sort of spun out of the fascination around Bullitt and French Connection having the big car chases. So you had those like big muscle car things. I would have been interested, like you said, to see that. He would have been. He did a very specific style of movie. He never really wanted to go beyond that, like this genre and this template that he made. But he would have been interesting to have made something, not exactly like Death Race, but he could have made something in that exploitation genre. Like, had he been healthy and lived significantly longer, it would have been interesting to see him do something along the lines of, how we had the Grindhouse movies from Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, he would have been great had they tapped him to make like a fake trailer for it. You know how they had those few at the beginning where it's like, and then a few of them ended up becoming real. He would have been great if you got a collection of like exploitation, sexploitation, direct-to-video guys from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they made like an anthology series. He would have been interesting to make like 50-minute movies.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Like imagine like Masters of Horror, where there were 50-minute horror episodes on Showtime. If they were like, Sidaris, you're tasked with making 2 or 3 in a 20-episode season that we're going to put out. You're tasked with making 2 episodes or 3 episodes of the same way you always make them. You can make them about the Lethal Ladies, but they're like Lethal Lady mini movies, where you could trim out all the fat, you could trim out all the excessive, you could still have your nudity in that. But he already worked with about a 30 or 40-minute plot line for every movie that was then stretched out usually, or they added little B plots and C plots. He could have been really great at being one of those guys that could be fitting into, that cog into the wheel of like over the top action stuff.
So I feel that there are 2 movies, even as written, that if they were done by Andy Sidaris, you wouldn't have blinked your eye. I mean, there'd be changes. From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
Think of that movie done by Andy Sidaris. Oh my God.
It obviously wouldn't have had the budget for the makeup, but yes, but that.
And I don't think he could shoot horror. I really don't. Now, that being said, I could picture a Sidaris doing a Fast and the Furious with more sexy stuff in it. I could do that.
But here's the second film, I think, as film, as written, could have been a Sidaris film, and that's Snakes on a Plane.
Oh yeah.
I
can totally see that.
And as far as like, if we're talking the Grindhouse stuff, I do think that Tarantino's Death Proof could have easily been done with him too.
Oh yeah,
I could see that.
There'd be more nudity, sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's true, very true. But like, there's been a renaissance in those style of movies. And he was not an overly gory person or anything, but he could have fit right in. He would have probably loved the era now of the streaming movie.
Yeah, so yeah, he's perfect for Tubi. Whenever Amazon hands out free money,
well,
I guarantee he'd be working for the Asylum. He'd probably still be working under Roger Corman.
He would have made a bunch of movies when Cinemax was trying to extend themselves into being not just like the Cinemax After Dark, when they were doing more action stuff like 10 years ago. He would have been big onto the sci-fi. He would have probably delved into the sci-fi thing, and it would have been with connections through Julie Strain, because she did a bunch of those like early 2000s sci-fi type movies.
Oh, sure.
At the same time, with the Renaissance now, like, he would have been Tubi TV and all that. It would have been great money, initially, that he would be given for it. But the fact that he would have had a platform, because when that last movie came out in '98, that is right when the cable bubble was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Before the burst, before internet file sharing and everything, it became problematic for his business model of the direct-to-video market, because less people were still renting a lot, but it was more about putting movies and content on television. And there would have been, with the exception of a few premium cable channels, most of his stuff would have to be heavily edited. And if you edited them down, you ended up only with like a 65-minute movie.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have had to have adapted a fair bit in the early 2000s.
He did say for the last couple of these movies that they filmed every single scene that had nudity without nudity for the international market if they required no nudity for it.
Oh, for like television rights and everything.
Yeah. So like they would be the same kind of movies just without nudity. I mean, a lot of like soft core kind of like grinding fully clothed, but
You know what? I'm kind of surprised that when they put out the Blu-rays that that footage didn't exist. Like, I would have been interested to see, press a button to change the angle, or change, like, how the Star Trek TOS stuff, when it was put on Blu-ray, you could just press the angle button and it would switch between the old graphics and the new.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting if they had done that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I love Sidaris just because he's charming. While there's nudity and like sex, it's almost innocent and like shy in a really weird way, like winking at the camera.
He was the world's oldest 15-year-old.
Yeah. It's sort of like, yeah, there's sexiness, there's sexy women, but we're not really doing anything that's really exploitative, so to speak.
No.
And he's charming.
He didn't make women in prison movies. He didn't make, the exploited nun movies of the 70s. He made empowered women that were top agents, they were the ones in control. They chose when to do things.
Yes. And it's very, very rare that you see something else in his movies. Like, I can count on one hand the number of times that a woman is tied up.
It was once or twice, and I remember we made note of it. I don't remember which movie it was, but we were like, "What the hell was that?"
Hard Ticket to Hawaii with Cynthia Brimhall. She's tied up at one point. There's no nudity, none, but she's tied up and gagged at one point when she's kidnapped.
There was something
that's it. I mean, besides a couple, there's one other.
There was something that I read where Sidaris really kind of pioneered the empowered woman being the lead action hero star. And considering coming out of the 70s, you had like Coffee and stuff like that, being hot on the exploitation scene. I'm kind of glad that continued the empowered kick-ass girl in the 80s and into the 90s. I mean, you didn't need the sexy time. Great and awesome, cool and everything. But the characters, the women never felt helpless. They were always competent. They were smart. They could do cool shit. The guys are honestly more useless more often than not, considering their superpowers, like leather vests and looking like Wolf Larson.
Well, if you look, think about when the Malibu was 1985. So if we don't count his previous couple films, when you count like when this whole series really began, we can't really count Terminator 1 as being the empowered women action star, because Linda Hamilton wasn't in that movie. if you look at the time,
Ripley.
It was basically Ripley and Alien, and then Pam Grier in basically every movie that Pam Grier was in.
Yeah.
Oh, and that was it. Because
Maybe
prior
Red
to that,
Sonja with
that's after.
Nielsen? Oh,
That's after. That's like 86 or 87. So
no, I think that was 83, wasn't it?
nope. That's Conan the Barbarian, and then Conan the Destroyer is 85 or 84, and then 80. Yeah, so like he predated pretty much everything except for Alien 1, and then what Pam Grier was doing. So and let's be honest, until early 90s, mid 90s, when Pam Grier's career had a renaissance again with Tarantino, her movies are basically relegated to audiences in the black communities, because unless you were a big fan of the blaxploitation genre, you didn't really know who she was. You saw posters of her in that. So he was sort of ahead of his time that way. We just don't realize it because there's been so many movies now since then, right? But it's just he was ahead of his time there. They're all worth watching. I do think they're all worth watching. There is varying degrees. I just wish that had the quality of the movies themselves had sort of stayed somewhere in that 1985 to 1991 realm, because it was kind of hard to watch some of the later ones. This one was a little better. They brought some people back in that I would have liked if they had a few more callbacks to previous movies, like having the guys be terrible shots. That would have been fun, but that just sort of didn't happen this time. But yeah, like I would say watch them all. If you're gonna watch, you don't watch them out of order. You kind of have to watch them in order for the most part. Like, don't watch this first, then Savage Beach, because you'll be disappointed with this one if you haven't seen the previous, because it'll spoil things in it anyway. But if you're just somebody who's going to watch it, and you're like, I don't know if I want to watch these or not, I would say it's a safe bet to go with. If you just want to watch one, would be Hard Ticket or like Picasso Trigger to start with.
I'd say the first three are probably the most watchable.
Malibu still feels like a 70s movie. But yeah,
you're 1985. Yeah, it does feel much more like a 70s film, because it's just remaking Stacey.
Yeah, like it feels like 1979 via 1985. But it's still good. But like where it really picks up, obviously is the second, third, and fourth film. If you go there. But yeah, honestly, a Hard Ticket might be the way to go if you're really unsure, and then jump back and go in order from there.
For me, I'd say the first two are worth watching. The third one, probably. Savage Beats, I've got a soft spot for. There's a couple of these that are frankly fucking atrocious.
I remember liking Guns.
Yeah, Guns is great.
Yeah, Guns was a lot of fun, and that one I really kind of did enjoy.
That's all on having Eric Estrada just be like full bore nutsoid in it.
Yeah, one of Sidaris' strengths is whenever he casts people, everybody's having fun, and that comes through on screen, because on-screen charisma, even if the movie is terrible, you get what I like to think of as the Nick Cage effect. The movie is fucking stupid, but the star or the side characters, they're putting on such a fun performance, you want to continue spending your time with them, because you're frankly in the mindset of, I want to know what's going to happen next, whether the movie is complete trash or not. So I would say definitely watch the first two or three, have yourself a fun time. Everything else is kind of hit or miss. I would say I wouldn't call him an underappreciated genius, but I would call Sidaris notable. I did enjoy most of the time I spent with this. I do wish some of his movies felt a little less like a Simpsons parody of what an action B movie is supposed to be. That was my big thing that I praised him for, because I do like this. They're made with such earnestness because they're meant to be fun.
If you want to quote me on this, these aren't B movies. These aren't C movies. These are double D movies.
Yay.
Yeah. I mean, and that's weird.
Oyo.
He exists in his own category in a weird kind of way.
Or in some cases, double I or triple I movies.
Yeah.
Some of these movies, each time it goes on, like the budgets get bigger and the implants get bigger.
Yeah, like it's wild. And some of these actresses who come from the modeling background or the adult film industry or just being whatever, some of them I think had genuine talent and could have really done interesting stuff had they chose to pursue acting a little bit more seriously, give them a few more roles to get a little bit more seasoned, and maybe they could have done something a little bit cooler. But everybody seems like they had fun. I mean, Aaron, you would be the expert. Did like anybody have any negative experiences working with Andy during their time?
None that I have read about. Everyone seems to have loved working with him. That his film shoots were generally way more relaxed and friendly than any others that they worked on. They usually filmed for 12 days at a location or in total with 1 day off. They always made sure that their hotels had a gym nearby so the actors and actresses could work out and get, stress out on like a treadmill. There was always food and drink right there. They only shot 12 days. They were not even usually there weren't like unions involved.
I was going to say, usually a shooting schedule is like 20 days for a low budget picture.
Yeah, but they did shorter and they only shot for 12 hours at the most every day instead of like some of these 18-hour days that you hear about.
So
even
basically,
at the time. You
get in most cases between 1 and 3 takes probably before you move on.
Well, yeah, and everyone seemed to really like Andy and Arlene Sidaris. They liked his son. His son wasn't as easy to work with Andy, but like Andy was supposedly the coolest guy ever. So who knows? I don't think anyone hated his son at all. Don't get me wrong. I think everyone loved him too. It's just that he wasn't as
somebody with something to prove versus somebody who's made his money and was basically retired and doing this for fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he was just having fun and wanting everyone else to have fun. He knew that he liked beautiful women. The beautiful women knew that he liked them, and there wasn't going to be any hanky-panky because he loved his wife more. And that really came across in all the commentaries that you listen to. He truly loved Arlene and constantly put her on a pedestal, and she was involved in all of these movies, which is also kind of weird to think about because how like sexual you think these movies are. But no, it's Arlene Sidaris is heavily involved in all of them as well.
It becomes like a family production, really, like more than anything. When you hear about it, like not just blood related, it's like everybody there, the crew, the cast, all sort of became like family. And in watching this, for anybody who's like an outsider looking in, or has listened to us and still hasn't gone and watched it, picture the later seasons of Baywatch, the last 2 seasons that were in Hawaii. Picture that with nudity, and that's basically what you got.
Yeah. And I'll say I think all of them are worth watching. There's ones that are clearly better than others, but all of them have a charm.
You can skip the ones his son directed, the 2 of them.
Sure. You can.
But outside of that, because like they're not really connected. At least one of them for sure is not really connected. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. All right, guys. So that's going to do it for this special series here on Loose Cannon. And what's going to happen as we move through the fall and into the winter programming? I know I'm going to be working very closely with Do You Even movie host David Denoyer. We'll be taking on a variety of different franchises as we move through the days getting shorter and the temperatures dropping. And I know, Aaron, you and Alex will be working on some stuff while I work with Dave.
Yes, and I'm not going to say what just yet because we have to figure out the order of things that we're going to do, but there's going to be plenty of stuff coming up.
Lots of Earth versus Soup as well.
Yep,
oh, yes,
so there'll
absolutely.
So there'll be lots of stuff coming up. I should have a couple more free episodes of Botched Roll, but if you want to check out my Patreon, that should be linked on the website if you want to get more exclusive content over there. I guess as of this recording, me and Aaron just published some stuff for the Star Trek Adventures 2nd Edition role-playing game, so go check that out at your local game stores. So be sure to be checking that out, and lots of good stuff coming up from us here at Twig as the year goes on, as we prepare for the onslaught of gaming that will surely start sooner than what I want it to.
Just gaming coverage, and then before we know it, it's already holiday season with Black Friday. Like, the year has gone by.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting time. So anyway, guys, that is going to do it for us. So for Loose Cannon, we have been
Alex, the producer.
Well, I'm Aaron Pollyea.
And I've been Mike the Birdman saying, be kind, rewind.
Are either one of these any good? Sir,
What?
are either one of these any good?
I don't watch movies.
Quick! Change the channel!
You're wasting your life making shit! Nobody cares! These movies are terrible!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.
Stacey, the James Blunt bombshell. She's a very private eye who mixes men, money, and murder. But no one messes with Stacey and lives.
Hey, man, don't gut me. Don't.
Oh, shit.
The syndicate wants to slay her, but she sends all the flowers.
You should trust no one that you don't sleep with on a regular basis.
Caught in a triple-cross blackmail multi-murder case, Stacey is... Take a ride on the wild side with Stacey. She's fast.
Golly, little daughter, that must be one of those new Volkswagens.
Never met a woman like this one before. Taking and giving and so much more. Something up inside will melt anyone's heart. Strong enough outside to rip you apart. Stacey is exciting. She's a man's dream. But you get to know what I mean.
In seduction or slaughter, Stacey always scores.